Hello and welcome to Forging a Minecraft Mod lecture number 4, blocks and tile entities. The last lecture we spoke about blocks, how to make simple ones, use textures, do different things depending on, well, what the user did, change the textures depending on different things. We used metadata for that, and we had textures on different sides doing different stuff, blah blah blah. So that was last time. We had simple blocks. Now we're going to continue with something called tile entities that we're going to use together with blocks to allow them to get more advanced. But before we get started with tile entities, I'm going to set up a basic block that we're going to use. So this first, I guess, 10 minutes or so will be sort of a summary of some of the parts we did last time to sort of understand them better by doing them again. So without further ado, let's go. So like I said, I'm going to start by making a basic block, and if you have seen the textures, you know what it's going to be called. It's going to be called block bomb. Yes, you heard me right. Right, so there are a few different things we'll have to do here. Let's zoom in here. Remember, we have to extend block. That's the basic Minecraft block. And now Eclipse just froze. There you go. And we want to import the Minecraft version. There's multiple blocks there to import. And we need to add the constructor block bomb and give it the ID, like so. And this ID we're going to send along to the superclass block, and also send along a material. And I'm just going to use the iron material like last time. There you go. We might want to set the creative tab. Tab stored, this is where we can find it, and I'm just going to put it in block. We can put it somewhere else if you want to. We can put it in your own tab if you created one. It doesn't really matter too much. It's where you want to find it. Set the hardness. That's how tricky it is to destroy. And also the step sounds. Well, basically, which sound will be used when we step on it, and I will use the metal one once again. And finally, we want to set the unlocalized name. And remember, we need an unlocalized name to be able to give it a proper name like that. Well, what should we use? I think we should use something that we define in block info. I haven't done that yet, so that's the next step, unlocalized name. So nothing new here. This is sort of what we did last time. We have our own class extending the base block class there, and then we have, well, the ID here that we send along to the superclass, and we set a few different things: the creator tabs, the hardness, the step tab, and an unlocalized name. So let's head over to the block info class here. So I just want to define a few different constants here, and I'll add them all right now. So we'll have the one with the ID. We have the one with the key for the config file, and I'm just going to call it bomb. Hey, there you go. Then we might want to have the default value as well. Like that. So those are for the configuration file. That we might want to have the unlocalized name and the localized name. For the for the naming, that's the one we're missing. Unlocalized name equals weird bomb. So yeah, this is not a normal bomb. It's a weird one. We'll see why later on. And of course, its name is, well, would make sense to call it weird bomb, wouldn't it? There you go. And finally, we want to use the texture. We'll have a constant here for the texture. And that's saved as bomb.png, so therefore I'm going to use the keyword bomb there. So this is what we did last time, well, parts of what we did last time. There we go. But what we're missing is a few things. We need to go to blocks here and create this one here. You can see the machine there, so it's still here. Block bomb. And what we'll have to do is create it and then register it. So for items we just create it, whereas for blocks we'll have to register them as well. There you go, the ID there, game registry dot register blocks. The one we want is that one. So we go with block, no, not block, bomb, and then block info, and the key there, that's fine. So like I said, nothing new here. What I'm doing here is creating the bomb and registering it, and then finally we want to register registry dot add name bomb and block info bomb name. There you go. So nothing new so far. We're just doing a few different things here. So it's sort of a summary of what we'll have to do to set up a block. So here we create it and register its name, and that only works properly because we've set an unlocalized name already. Right. We're missing two things. First of all, we need to go into the config handler and add this as part of the config. Block info dot bomb ID config dot get block info dot bomb key, and finally the default here. So here we go with the configuration file. Very straightforward, just to allow the user to set the ID of this block. So when that has been done, we'll head over to our class again, the block bomb extensive block class, and we'll need to add one last thing, and that last thing is of course the texture. We need a texture. We define what texture we want, but we of course need to actually load that and use that. And when we worked with items in the beginning, we saw that we had an icon called item icon, and we can just set that, and that would be used by default. And actually we have the same for blocks. So if we just want one icon for all the different sides, and we don't care about any conditions to what to load, we can just store that in a icon called block icon, and then that's going to be loaded by default. So just register the icon here, block info dot texture location, and then block info dot bomb texture. So the file is obviously called bomb.png, but the we're referring to it as bomb. You don't add the extension there. So here we go. Register icons. Sorry, that should be an S there. There you go. So now we have, well, this little part here, some basic properties. We have the icons here, we register them. We have the configuration, and we also create the well, we have the defined here, but here we create the block. Here we register it, and here we register a name. And this is all we need to create a very basic block. And let's see if we can start that and take a look at that. But so this is the short introduction, well, not introduction, but sort of a summary of some parts that we did last time. So to set up a very basic block, it went quite fast, I know, but all that I did now has been discussed in more depth during the last lecture. And after this, after Minecraft is slow at starting, and we'll take a look on what we can do further, and we're going to introduce tile entities and how we can do well, not do those, but use those to improve a block, to make it more advanced. Right. Okay. This took a long time, but yeah. So this block here, what I want to do with it is, well, do more advanced things. If we take a look on just a simple block that we've seen before, it can store 16 different values with the metadata. This block that I have now is not using it, but well, we saw last time that we could use 16 different values. That's not that much, to be honest. So we'll take a look later on how we can use tile entities to store more values than that. But as you can see, we just have this simple block here. It doesn't do anything. It has a name and it has a texture. So there we go. Right. So like I was starting to tell you about, we can use tile entities to, well, store more values. We don't have to store just 0 to 15. We can store whatever we want to. We can store a whole poem inside a tile entity that is unique for every single time we place this block. So a tile entity is not something we use instead of blocks. It's something that we can make sure that our block contains, sort of. You can think of that we have a tile entity inside a block. Of course, the tile entity is not a physical object or anything. We can think about it as if it would be inside the block. So what do we need to do to create a tile entity? Well, first of all, we should head over to our block bomb class here, and instead of extending block, I would like to extend block container. Import that. There you go. And if we take a look on what the block container does, open declaration here, we'll go to it, we can see that it doesn't do too much, but in the end it extends block, so we'll get everything that we had before plus a little bit extra. And the important part here is that it implements iTile Entity Provider. And what it means to implement that interface is that we must provide it with a tile entity. We'll get one method that we have to provide it with, and if you can, I would suggest, well, extending block container, because it contains all the information we need. It has some block event methods here. It removes the tile entity when the block is being broken, and so on. So if you can, extend the block container, otherwise implement iTile Entity Provider on your own. So that's also possible. But since we can extend block container, it's just a matter of doing so. And then it's going to complain about that we haven't implemented this method here. So create new tile entity. So what is this? Well, basically we have a base block, right? We have one instance of block bomb that we do create over here. That's going to be used all over the Minecraft world when we place this bomb. Of course, it doesn't explode or anything, but this block. It is going to refer to the base block, and therefore we can't, when we head into block bomb here, we can't have fields here like we discussed before. We can't have fields here that we change and want them to be unique for each instance that we have. That's not going to work. Well, like I've discussed in previous lectures. But for each time we place a block with a tile entity, it's going to create a new instance of this tile entity. So each time we place, if we do this now that we extend block container and give it a tile entity, so that we give the block bomb a tile entity, then we're going to create a new tile entity for each time we place this block. Why is this important? Well, that means that we will have one instance for each physical block that we can see in the world, which means that we can modify any fields that we want to inside this instance, and they will only be changed for that very placed block. We'll see in a bit a better example on how that works. So for now, I can't really return anything specific here because I want to return my tile entity. So what I'm going to do is create a new package for the tile entities. Here we go. It should be called tile entities, like that. Okay, and inside there I'm just going to create a new class. There you go. And I'm going to call this tile entity bomb. There you go. And hit finish. Right, so what do I need to do to make this a proper tile entity? Well, actually the only thing that I do need to do is extend the tile entity. There you go, it's done. Well, I need to import it as well. Come on, import it. Silly, I don't want to import it. Okay, Eclipse, there you go. Oh, it was just a bit slow. Never mind. There you go. So it's done now. It doesn't do anything good, but it's there, and it would work to have it like this. It's empty, so it doesn't do anything, but still. So how do we use this? How do we tell our block that it should use this? Well, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. We just return it here. Return new tile entity bomb. There you go. Just like that. And as you can see, we create a new instance here, which means that each time we place a block, we're going to get a new version of this tile entity. So we have one new instance for each time we place the block, compared to the block itself, which we just have one of. But you don't want to behave. Tile entity bomb. Come on, Eclipse. Okay, Eclipse is a bit misbehaving. I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, it don't want to import it. I guess I will have to import it myself. Import example dot tile entities dot tile entity. Alright, I misspelled this. Tile entities. There you go. That should work. So I don't know why Eclipse didn't want to import that, but well, I just imported it myself. So this is the first step to just extend block container or implement iTile entity provider right away. But like I said, I would recommend using block container if possible. And then we need to return our tile entity here. But we need to do another thing as well. We need to register our tile entity that we do have this tile entity. So what I'm going to do is head over to blocks, right, and I'm going to add a method here called static void register tile entities. There you go. What I'm going to do here is basically registering the tile entity, but to do that we need a key to register it with, so I'm just going to go into block info here and add that over here. So public static final string bomb te, so that's tile entity. I can name it whatever I want, but I think that makes sense. So, tile entity key equals bomb tile entity, and this works a bit like the key we use for the names. We need to give it a key so it can refer to that, so it can find it among others. So yeah, that's just a key we register it with. And what I want to do is do game registry dot register tile entity, and we give it its class and its name. So not an instance like we do for the block. Here we give it machine or the bomb. No, that's the one here. Machine or the bomb. When we register the block, we give it the actual block. Here we want to give it the class. So what we do is tile entity bomb dot class. And here I want to do block info dot where's the key? There you go. Bomb t key. Awesome. Okay, so Eclipse has broken down and won't import anything, and that has happened before. The solution is to restart Eclipse, but I'm not going to do that now because, well, that's going to take a minute or two. So what I'm going to do is just import it myself, like that. There you go. So just import it yourself. If it fails, normally Control-Shift-O would do the trick. But like I said, it's just a matter of restarting Eclipse and it would start working again. So there we go, we register that, but of course we need to head over to the mod class itself and actually call that method, otherwise it wouldn't work. Well, otherwise it wouldn't do anything. So here from load, that init method, blocks dot register tile entities. There you go. Right. Sweet. So now that's going to be called, and then we're going to register the tile entity. So to work with a tile entity, we first of all, of course, need to have one. It doesn't do anything at the moment, but we need to have one. Then we need to head over and register it somewhere. So we register the tile entity class together with a key. And the third thing we need to do is to associate it with a block, and we do so by making sure that a block somehow implements iTileEntityProvider, but if possible just extend the block container instead, and then return a new instance of the tile entity over there. Right, so let's get started in actually creating the tile entity itself, because it doesn't do anything. Well, let's go. So, like I said, since this is a tile entity that we create a new instance of it for each time we place the block, we can just have fields here that, well, we can modify and work with in any way that we would like. So I'm going to have a constructor here where I set the timer to 100. So obviously I wouldn't be able to have a metadata for this timer, it's too big. I have 100 ticks or whatnot that I want to use for this timer, and each time it well, I want it to decrease, I would just change that value. But if I used metadata instead, I would just have, well, 16 different values. But well, now I can just define whatever I want. Then I'm going to use another method called updateEntity. This is going to be called, well, every time it ticks, every time the world ticks. So we can do something each world tick, basically. And of course I have a timer. What should we do with it? Of course we should decrease it. Like that. Makes sense, right? And well, if the timer reaches 0, we would probably want to do something. And what that is going to be is, well, if timer equals 0, we want to do something. But now I should ask you a tricky question. What do we need to make sure to do when we want to do something? I'm going to modify the world in some case, some sense, in some way. So what should I do? Well, the answer is, of course, I need to make sure that I do that on the server side only, because the client side is going to be told by the server what's going on, rather than us telling the client to perform that action as well. If we do so, it will be a bit out of sync. But we don't have a world object. We don't have a reference to the world that we had when we worked with blocks. If we take a look in Block Machine that we worked with last lecture, we have, for instance, here on Entity Walking, we get the world, we get the location as well, so we can refer to it properly. So what do we do this time? We need to check if it's remote or not. Well, it's quite simple, actually. Remember, we have one instance of this tile entity each time we place this block. That means that we can associate this tile entity with a location. We can associate it with a world that it's in, because it's not going to change. It's not a base tile entity that is being referred to from many different locations. It's one instance at that specific location. That means that this is already stored in the tile entity. I can just refer to something called world object, short for world object, and that's the world we're currently in. It's remote, like that. And of course we want to change that it's on the server side, so I just use not is remote. Okay, so if the timer reaches 0 on the server side, I want to do something, and all of you probably say, alright, he's just going to make it explode. Of course not. That would be boring to just make it explode. So to to make things work better here, I'm going to create another method. You will see in just a second what it will do. It's called spread. I want this bomb, or whatever it is, to spread to nearby blocks. How do we do that? Well, first of all, we check if the world has an air block at that specific location. We used that before when we spawned an anvil in the last lecture, and this is going to work pretty much the same. And then we just set it at the specific coordinates, and then we give it the ID to well, to spawn, well, to set there. So if we want to alright, we need to import that, and Eclipse is of course failing. Luckily I have the code prepared, so I can, and yeah, I don't know what Eclipse is doing now. There you go, so I can just copy that in. So we need to import a block info. So we refer to the ID of the bomb. So if we call this method spread, it's going to place a bomb at the coordinate we gave it if that block is empty. So it's not going to spread to an occupied block already. So then we can just call this method here like this, and I need to give it the coordinates I want it to spread to. How do I do that? I want it to be well, nearby the current block. Well, I can get the coordinates of this tile entity just doing xcoord. That's the x coordinate of this tile entity. So I'm just going to define it like this. So that's going to make sure that at the position that is 1 greater in the x-axis, I'm going to try to place another bomb. And I'm going to do the same in the negative direction, and then in the positive direction there. So it's going to spread in 4 different directions. So why do I have a tile entity here and not another block? Well, first of all, I have a timer here that I want to start at 100. I can't do that for a normal block, because then I would have to use the metadata, and there I have 16 different values. Second of all, I'm using this method called update entity. I want this tile entity to update each tick. I want to do something. In this case, I want to decrease the timer until we reach 0, where I want this block to spread out. So I'm using 2 things. I want to store more data than a normal block, and I want to update it all the time. So that's a tile entity, well, 2 of the features of a tile entity. Right. So let's see how that works, and then we're going to, of course, extend this and add more code to it. But now we've seen a very basic tile entity. We're registering it, we're adding that to the block, we're creating a new instance there in the block, and then we're defining some very basic mechanics in there. Okay. So now if I place this bomb here, it should, after 5 seconds, it's waiting 100 ticks, it should spread. And now the middle block has spread completely. It had reached 0, and well, this is going to get out of hand very quickly. So let's break it quickly. And from now on, I'm therefore going to use this little hole here to put them in, so it can't spread for an eternity, which could get very messy and be very much work for the server to handle. Right, so that was the first thing, but oh right, I actually forgot to show a thing. If we place a block and it's starting to spread, it should obviously stop spreading when it reaches 0, right? Well, as I said, it's going to spread once and then stop. But we're going to have a bit of an issue. I forgot to show that issue. So if we start again, like this, and I'm going to put that there, we're going to see that it's spreading, just like before. We have that, it's going to tick down to 0. When it reaches 0, it's going to spread out. We're going to see that when the outer blocks reach down to 0, it's going to spread out. When those reach down to 0, they will of course also spread out. If I remove the middle block, of course nothing will happen. These blocks here in this border here, they have already spread and they are stable, you could say, so nothing will happen there. But if I exit out and go back in again, what will happen then? Well, of course it shouldn't spread, but well, it does. So what's going on here? Well, when we start the world again, it's going to create a new tile entity. That's how we define it. When we place a block, when a block is placed, it should get a new tile entity. We'll also define that the timer starts at 100. And when that 100, those 100 ticks decreases down to 0, well, it should spread. And therefore, when we load the well again, after 5 seconds, they will spread inwards again. And that's not what we want to. It should have stopped. It should have been stable. It should have been idle, but it wasn't. So how do we sort this out? Well, basically what we'll have to do is save the state of it. So we save the state and then load it again when we load the world. This is fairly easy to do, but when we work with metadata, it's even easier because that's already handled behind the scenes. It's telling us that, well, last time we saved this block, it had a metadata of 5, so we'll load it with the same. But like I've said, we can have how many values that we want in, well, inside this tile entity, so it doesn't really know what we would like to save, and therefore we'll have to do it on our own. What we're going to do is override two methods, one for saving and one for loading. So we have write to NBT tag compound. We get that there. So this is the saving part, and it's obviously not going to get that, and Eclipse is not going to be able to import it because it's evil and everything. But you know, I don't even know if I have it here in my comments. So yeah, but anyways, so this tag compound here is well, basically the thing we want to save it to. We get a compound, whatever that is, and we want to save our data to it. Then when we load it all again, when the service starts, we're going to get the compound again, and we can retrieve the information. But I need to import this, so give me a second. I'm just going to check what it's called. It should be in there, yeah. So manually import silly Eclipse. Import net.minecraft.nbt tag compound. There you go. So that's that one, and then we have the opposing one called public void read from NBT. So like I said, we have I'm just going to copy this. We get the compound out, and then we can save things to it, and then when the world loads again, we get the compound again, and we can retrieve what we saved. So basically, when we save something to the compound first, it's going to be saved as part of the world. Then when we load it, we'll get a part of the world to read from, which is the compound. A compound is basically a lot of values that we can associate with different tags, different keys. One important thing to do is, however, to do this, tell the superclass to write to its NBT, and what this is going to do is save sort of where we're located, which world we're at, which position we're at, so we don't have to do that ourselves. So just do super.write to NBT like that. And the next thing to do is compound.setShort timer short timer. Okay, so we have two different things here. First of all, we save it using set something, then we use a key, which can be anything, and then our value. So why am I setting this as a short rather than an integer? You can set it as an integer. Well, an integer can go up to millions in their highest values, and well, I'm never going to have a timer that goes that high. An integer have 4 bytes, where a short only have 2. So if I can, why shouldn't I use a short so I don't have to save as much information to the world save? Of course, just 2 bytes doesn't do a lot for just one block, but in the big run, when you have tons of blocks, it might be good to have this amount as small as possible. So that's why I'm saving it as a short rather than a integer. I could of course save it as a byte as well, because I should be able to fit in a byte, you know, from -128 to +127. But I'm going to extend this a bit, so I might want to need a bit bigger values than just from -128 to +127. So therefore I think short is just fine. I go from about -32,000 to about +32, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. No, that should be correct. About 32,000 plus and 32,000 minus. So that's that part. It's my choice of type we save it as, and we want to do the supercall here as well. Okay, and finally what we need to do is read this again. So to save things, we obviously, or well, to keep things between server sessions, we need to save it and then load it back again. And you need to read it as the same thing, so compound.getShort, because that was we have saved, and we just give it the key. So it's pretty straightforward to save things. We just have this write to MBT here, and we have the read from MBT, so we can save things and then load them back in again. Use the same key so we can refer to it properly, and there you go. So you can save any values that you want to. You can keep any values in the tile entity as fields you want to have, but you can also save as of the world by just using the write to MBT and read MBT methods. Remember to override them, of course, so we save the proper information as well for application. And if we don't do that, everything will be, well, stop working properly. So now if let's remove these are obviously using old stuff. Now when we develop things, it might be a bit weird because we have changed things and these are using old code and you know. So now it's going to spread here like before, but hopefully if everything works properly, it should save its timer. It shouldn't be reset when we restart, and it's very easy to check. Now I can just remove that, and when it extends outwards, it shouldn't go in. But then if I close down and load in like I did before, will it spread inwards? Let's take a look. No, but it will still spread outwards, and the reason is we saved what each and every block here had as its timer. So if you want something to persist, then you will need to save it and then load it back again, like we just did. Right, so what's the next step? Well, if you're taking a look in the textures folder, you'll see that we have two textures, one that is active, or well, one normal, and one that is called idle. So what if we want to define so the bomb looks different if it has already spread, because then it can't do anything, it's sort of stable, it won't spread anymore, which we have seen. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, it would make sense to create a method here called isIdle that we can use. So when is it idle? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It is if the timer is less than 0. Then it has done its job, it has spread already, it should be defined as idle. Okay, so that's the first step. It's not a big deal. The second step is to go into block info and define where we can find this other texture. Bomb underscore idle texture, and that texture, as you might have seen, is called bomb underscore idle, like so. So now we have the texture there, so now it's just a matter of registering it. Nothing new here. And what I want here is block, not block, I want idle icon, bomb underscore idle texture, like so. And I need to define this here, so I use side only, and then I need to define that idle icon. And I need to import this, but Eclipse is, well, not on my side today. Oh, it did work. Okay. I don't know what happened there. It did actually work. All of a sudden, so. This didn't work. There you go. Oh right, wait, what? Yeah, I don't know what's going on anymore. Here you go, sorry. That should work. Pretty loud. Oh, right, it imported the wrong icon. Yeah, so Eclipse seems to have lost all knowledge about anything Minecraft related. So what it just did was import the wrong icon, and then things can go very wrong. If you import things that are wrong, it's going to act weird and you might not realize what's going on, and that's exactly what just happened. So to make this work properly, I'm just going to make sure to import the correct icon, and I have that import over here inside the other block that we had from last lecture. So I'm sorry about this thing, it's Eclipse derping, but you'll see that if things goes wrong, things can go very wrong. So I guess that's a good example of that. So now we have registered that icon as well and stored it in something called idle icon, just a method defined there. So how do we load this differently depending on if it's active or idle? Well, let's do it like this. We first of all say that we override something on the client side, and then we have a method called getBlockTexture. It's obviously returning an icon, so maybe getBlockIcon would be a better name, but that's what it's called. It's probably an old name that have remained the same because, well, it's quite new. These icons, they were introduced in 1.5. So what we get is something called iBlockAccess, and I will have to import that. I don't know how that's going to work. And then we get the coordinates, and finally the side. There you go. So I'll have to import that, and I don't have a clue where that's located. We'll take a look at that later. But what we want to do is tile entity bomb. So I want to get the tile entity at a specific location. And how do I get that? Well, I can get a tile entity, and then I want to convert that to, well, my type of tile entity, and I get so by getting the tile entity from the world here, block tile entity at x, y, and z, like that. There we go. And what this means is that we grab the tile entity at the current block and stores it at a tile entity bomb tile entity at that specific location. It would make a bit more, well, it would be a bit more secure if we got the tile entity, made sure that we had a tile entity there and that we had it of the correct type and so on. But, well, it should be the correct one, but you never know. But I'm running out of time, so I won't do that. And then if we have the bomb there, then what I'm going to check if is here you go, is idle, and if it's idle, then I want to return the idle icon, and otherwise I want to return the normal icon. Of course I forgot to return, but there you go. So if the bomb is idle, we return 1, and otherwise we return other. So we have a method here called getBlockTexture, where we get the world and the coordinates and the side, and then we can just use that however we want to do it. So I get a tile entity, which makes sense. We have the world and we have the coordinates, and then we just convert that to our tile entity bomb, because we know it's a tile entity bomb, or we know it should be. The better way would be to make sure that that's actually the case as well. And finally we return 2 different icons depending on this. So now we're pretty much done. We only need to import this thing, and Eclipse is on strike, so yeah. Import net.minecraft.world, I think it's located in here, iBlockAccess. Yes, there you go. Some knowledge about the packages. So there you go. We just defined, so we return the texture depending on the tile entity state. And we'll see how this looks like. And after the break, we'll take a look on some other things. Tile functionalities that we haven't covered just yet. But this is the final example for this part of the lecture. But we'll take a look on that now. So now if I break this, there you go, now it's changed. So what's going on here? So it's not really working that well for some reason. Let's remove that annoying achievement thingy. But if we replace it and it's going to spread out, it's hopefully going to work. There you go. So that has another icon. Let's see if it spread. It didn't update the icons. That's weird. Now it did. So it's a bit weird how things go here. And why is it doing that? What's going on? Well, basically, we've done everything correct. We're returning the correct icon depending on, well, if it's idle or not, but we're missing a few things. And what those things are, I'm not going to tell you just yet. I'll see you in about 15 minutes when we will see what we can do.